Hi, and welcome to ConfigMas Day 4, our month-long user group party. I am Amy.
And I am Johan.
Today we are talking about something super shiny that I know warms your heart.
The hydration kits.
Yes, hydration kits.
So, I mean, the kits are here to help you build an automated lab, set up an environment, config manager, domain controllers, everything you need to have a lab go in. But out of curiosity, how long have you been using these kits?
So here, my son is 6, so 6 years.
That's pretty cool. So what kind of hardware is needed?
You don't need anything too shiny. Again, this is one of those questions where it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
For sure, shinier may be better. But when I first started with my very first lab, it was this exact model of laptop. It was company issued. And when I left the job, I liked the laptop so much, I bought my own. And this served as my lab for a very long time. And originally I used an external hard drive that was connected to the USB 3.0 ports for the storage. And I found out that if you look at my screen here, you can see the system information pulled up so you can get a little bit of understanding of what I'm talking about. The manufacturer says that it only supports booting off of 16 gigs of RAM. However, that's not true. It does boot off of 32 gigs of RAM, but I did flash the BIOS all the way up to the latest version at the time. And at that point, I mean, now that version is very old, so you could buy a device like this, throw in 32 gigs of RAM. It does have a Core i7 processor. Obviously, the shinier processor, the better. But again, don't kill yourself buying your very first lab environment, especially if your company won't support that purchase for you. You can definitely do it in an economical way. Again, this is what I used for a very long time. This is where I learned ins and outs and really gained my confidence in the platform, is using this exact host.
Usually, as you say, an i7, 32 gigs of RAM, a terabyte NVMe SSD, something like that. Mm-hmm. If you buy all that stuff brand new, it's going to set you back about $900, maybe up $1,000. But if you buy a used machine, you actually can get it for less.
Yes.
So, but that's like a good start. And think of it, that's not that big of a money for a company to invest in. So ask your manager nicely and say, okay, please have a lab machine. And it's kind of nice. Mm-hmm. All right. What about Windows version to run on?
So, again, when I first had this, obviously I had purchased the device myself. And when I was running it off of the company-issued laptop, they weren't going to give me a server key. So I had used Windows 10. And I, at the time, used the community data deduplication
kit
package, whatever you want to call it, that was super shiny when it was in its prime. It has since kind of fallen away. It's a lot of work to maintain. A fellow community member was the one maintaining it. And with newer releases of Windows, it was hard to keep up and hard to continue to make it work. So after a few years, I quit using Windows 10 OS and I switched to Server OS because I have keys for that now. So if you look at my screen now, you can see I'm actually running a dedupe job on my server host because, as you can see, I've only got about 70 gigs of space left on my 1.5 terabyte drive. Times have certainly changed since I used this laptop. It's a lot more shiny. Anyway, I run a dedupe script that actually, I can pull up the script. It runs 3 different jobs to clean things up. It's in the middle of running. It looks like it completed the first job. It's about to start the second job, and it'll have a countdown timer of time remaining. But even after just running the first job, I'm already saving myself a ton of space.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
That's basically like buying
a new hard drive.
A new hard drive. So I definitely recommend, if you can, using the Server OS because of the data deduplication feature.
Yeah. So it can be Server 2016, Server 2019, doesn't really matter, but pick one of those and that should be good. So once you have the hardware, once you have some Windows version on it that you're happy with, then you can start to play around with the kit. And the first thing you need to do is simply go to my blog, Deployment Research, search for hydration. And the latest kit is a kit that builds a few Windows Server 2019 servers, one with SQL Server 2017, SQL Server 2017, and that's intended for the Config Manager current branch site server. And there are really 3 steps to this. One will be to download and extract the kit.
Yep.
That's not heavily hard. It's a zip file you download and that's it. And the blog post, step-by-step details and what you need to do, etc., etc. But you need to have MDT and ADK installed on the machine that you're doing this on. It requires that. So after extracting the kit, what you get on the file system is not that folder, but you get this folder. So this is just a regular MDT deployment share. And I can open up that in the workbench, and it would look like this. It comes pre-populated with all the applications, the images that you need, and the sequences to build the various servers. So if I open up the DC01 sequence, this is just the standard server deployment sequence, but in the beginning, after doing the usual format the disk and applying the image and all that stuff, in the end here, it actually installs DNS, directory services, installs the HTTP, creates the scope, authorizes it in Active Directory, creates some structure, OUs, users, etc., some subnets, sets up PKI in the event you want to play around with PKI and stuff. But this is just a regular server deployment that in the end converts this server into a domain controller. The other sequence is for CMO1. And this is also a regular server deployment sequence. But in the end, that sequence does everything that ConfigMas needs, like installing all the prerequisites, installing ADK, installing the WinP add-on for ADK, install SQL, sets the firewall, configure memory, and then installs the site server. And that's a complete setup of a primary site server. So what it basically means is that once you're done with this, let me back a little bit, because this share doesn't create itself. You actually need to run a script. This script. That script creates the share. So that would be like the initial steps. The second larger step, and this is why most people actually fail, it's a copy and paste. And I figured that would be fairly simple to do, but nope.
No, I had a lot of trouble with that when I first started using it.
Yeah, so to give you an example here, if I scroll down, that will be a section that basically say copy files. So, example number 2 here. Copy big info to this folder. All right. Copy the ADK to this folder, etc., etc. Copy SQL to this folder. And previously, it was more interesting because I was using Server 2016 with SP1. And people would copy in Service Pack 1 instead of SQL with Service Pack 1. And that caused some problem. Mm-hmm. But you simply do a copy or paste of media, and that could be trial media that you download from the eval center, or it could be full version media that you have license to use in your environment. We tested with both, so that works. So, again, download, extract, run the script, copy and paste from a few different folders. Takes half an hour, give or take. And then you simply go down here and you generate a media. Right-click, update media, and this creates a big ISO file. And I already run it because it takes like 10-20 minutes to run, depending on your machine. And that media shows up in... Why did I close that window for? In this folder here. So this is a 14 gig or 13 gig ISO file. The key for this one, it's bootable. It's an MDT media. So now I can simply create a virtual machine. So I'm going to create a VM. I'm going to call it ConfigMas DC01. Store it somewhere on a hard drive. Perfect. Generation 2, usually. And this works, by the way, in VMware too. So we test in both. Give it some memory. And in the document, in the blog, I defined how much memory you need for each VM. Connected to a network is helpful. I'm going to go for Stockholm for now. Give it a hard drive. And I will configure it to boot from that ISO. So hydration, ISO, boot, finish, done. So now I simply power on that VM, boot from the ISO, and wait patiently.
Is there a favorite key that you have that you press when you're booting from ISO?
Yeah, spacebar often. I actually saw an image a long time ago. Somebody actually mark that with any key, the
any
label.
key, yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things when we were writing batch scripts back in the days was when you add a pause to the script. You can customize the output. You can say press any key to continue or any other key to exit. That was how I had fun growing up. Sidebar. Anyway, you see the sequences here now. Pick DC1, hit next, leave for 20 minutes. Because after 20 minutes you have a domain controller. And then the key is to leave this running. And then you create another VM. And this time you pick MDT01 or CM01, because when they are done, you will have a complete environment ready to play with. And I've lost count how many of different environments I have spin up over the last 4 or 5 years. Might not be in the hundreds, but it's pretty close, I'll say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's all. If you haven't tested this, find yourself a machine somewhere and play around with it.
Very shiny.
Very shiny. All right. Thank you so much, guys. And I hope we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, for day 5.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.